Hello again, Math 10Cs. In today's lesson, I'm going to show you how to use a bunch of different features on the graphing calculator, specifically this time around related to graphing. In the last few lessons, you did have to construct a bunch of graphs, but you did it by hand. And the way you did it is if you were given an equation for either a line or a curve, and then you had to plug in different values for the input, different x values, and you calculated different output values y, and then you plotted those ordered pairs x comma y, and then based on the shape of the graph, if it was linear, you put a line of best fit through it, and if it was not linear, you probably sketched like a nice smooth curve through it. Now, I'm going to have to continuously swap back and forth between the window of the notes and also the smart calculator screen. Again, you need to have your calculator out when you go through this. I'm going to try to go through it relatively fast. However, what I recommend doing is if at any point it's going too quick, just simply pause the YouTube video just so you can get caught up with what it is I'm doing. Okay, so let's go through all these different things we can use the graphing calculator for. So the first thing we need to do is we need to prepare the graphing calculator to graph. Okay, so let's go to my graphing calculator. Now, I'm going to actually reset my calculator just to like the default settings because who knows what we actually have plugged into different parts of the calculator. So the way to do that is I'm going to hit the second button, then hit the plus sign, which will access memory. Then I want to go to reset, which for me is number 7. And all RAM, hit number 1, and it'll prompt me to reset, and then I'll hit enter on that, and then it'll tell me that all the RAM is cleared. Okay, now, to prep this thing, the first thing I want to do is I need to make sure my calculator is in function mode. Now, it should already be in here. So what I want to do is I want to click on the button mode. And then if you look, I think like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from the top, there's a row that says function, parametric, polar, and then SEQ. We want it to be on function. So no problem, it's already in function. We don't have to do anything different. The second thing I want to do is I want to set a window for the graphing calculator in terms of like what kind of a graph any specific scale is going to be plotted. So the way to do that is you're going to click on the zoom button. So the zoom button is up here. And you can see it highlighted in red. And then I want to pick the one that says number 6. Number 6 says zoom standard. So I'll hit number 6. And then it should bring up a grid. Now, what this window does is in terms of like what the scaling looks like is I can actually check the scaling of the graph if you hit this button called window. Now, when I hit this button called window, what it tells me is it says, what is the smallest x value that's being plotted on the graph? What's the biggest x value that's being plotted on the graph? And how much does every grid line represent? So if I go back to my graph here, so just click on graph, your smallest x value be on the far left-hand side of the graph, that's -10. On the right-hand side of the graph, that's your biggest x value. We call it the x max. That's +10. So x min is -10. X max is +10. And every grid line is going to go up by 1. We refer to that as the x scale. If we go back to window, we can do the same thing for the y-axis. So the y-axis says a minimum value of -10, a maximum value of +10, and it says y SCL. That means y scale is 1. So if I go back to my graph, on the graph, this tick at the very bottom, that would be -10. This little grid line at the very top would be +10. That's your Y max. The bottom's Y min. And the Y scale is we go up by 1 for every single grid line. Okay. Now, we also want to set the format of the calculator. So the way to do that is I'm going to hit the second button and then hit zoom, because if you look above zoom, it says format. And then I have a screen appear that is going to look like this. And I don't think there's anything we need to change here, actually. We have a rectangular grid. We have our coordinates on. Yeah, I don't believe anything needs to be actually changed here. So we can simply just exit this. Okay. Yeah, I don't think there's a problem with this. If there is, I'll come back to it later, but I don't think there's an issue with this. If you want to get back to the original screen, just hit the second button and then hit mode, because above mode it says quit. Now, we then want to go to the part of the calculator where we can start to input equations to graph. That's going to be this button at the very top left that's referred to as the y equals button. So I want to click y equals. Now, I want to highlight at the very top here. There's these three names where it says plot 1, plot 2, and plot 3. And I want to highlight these three. So what I do is I go above plot 1 and I just hit enter. And I think that's all we want right now, okay? If you go to plot 2 and enter, I'll change it to plot 2. Actually, I think we can do all three. No, we want them off. Yeah, sorry. We actually want these three things off here. So let's hit enter to turn them all off. Yeah, we do not want them on. Okay. Now, what I want to do is I want to enter an equation into this graph. Now, the equation I'm going to enter in, so let's go back to the notes for a second, is I want to enter the equation y is equal to negative 1.25x plus 15. Now, the way we do this is I want to go to the spot here where it says y1. So I just hit the down arrow to get to it. And then I'm going to enter in. Now, y1 is just what y is, okay? So right now, it's already in the form of y is equal to something. So I'm going to put down negative. So the negative symbol's down here. Again, note that the negative and the subtraction symbols are different. So negative 1.25. Now, the spot to get the x, which is the input variable, that's going to be located directly below the mode button. So that's going to be at this position. So we got the x here. And then I'm going to write down plus 15. Okay, so it says y1 equals negative 1.25x plus 15. Don't worry about the y1 here, okay? Just worry about the y for the time being. Okay, we'll talk about like what y1, y2, y3 means later. Okay, let's see what the graph looks like. So I'm going to hit the graph, and then I get a blue line that I can see in quadrant 1 of this Cartesian plane. Now, this is not really the best window setting for this graph. Typically, what you want for a good window setting is you want to be able to see both the x-intercept and you want to be able to see both the y-intercept of the graph. I know the x-intercept is going to be somewhere towards the right here, and the y-intercept is going to be somewhere towards the top. So I need to do something that's going to change this. So let's go to the next page here and identify how to do this. Okay, so it says the following procedure may be used to adjust the window settings. So instead of reading this all out, I'll just simply do it. Okay, so let's go back to our graphing calculator. So I'm going to hit the window button. Okay, the window button brings up the spot where you can change like the minimum, maximum values along with the scale. And I want to use the cursor to enter in appropriate values to adjust the Cartesian plane and then press the graph key. Okay, so let's change the x min to -5. Now, the reason I'm going to do that is because I don't see any of the graph over in this quadrant. So there's no reason it needs to start all the way over at -10. So let's change that to -5. So if you want to get rid of this, you can just hit clear and then -5. Now, we need to make the x max value bigger because the problem here is that the x-intercept is going to be somewhere over to the right-hand side, okay? So this only goes up to a value of 10. So maybe going up to like 15 or 20 might be okay. So I'll change it to 20. So let's go back to window. And then the x max, I'm going to change to 20. And the x scale, you can make it go up by 2s if you wanted to, but there's really no reason to do that. And now if I go back to graph, I should be able to see the x-intercept. So I've changed the graph so I can actually see where it hits the x-intercept at. So now what it's doing is it's showing an x max of -5 and it's going up to an x max of +20. Now, I also want to see the y-intercept. So let's go back to the window and I'm going to change the y max to something bigger, okay? Because +10, it's not fitting in there for +10. So let's change it to +25. Okay, then hit the graph button again. And now I can actually see the graph go through the graph go through the y-intercept. I have a bunch of these little tiny grid lines here. Again, if you don't want so many of them, you could go back here and you could actually change the y scale. So for example, you could make the y scale go up by 5s instead of 1s. So if I change it like this, you could do the same thing for the x scale too if you wanted to. So the x scale you could change to going up by 5s. So if I do that and I regraph it, then every one of these ticks goes up by a 5. So what I have is a graph that starts at an x min of -5, goes to an x max of +20. I have a y min of -10, and it goes to a y max of +25. And I can see both the x and y intercepts on the graph, which is what I would like to be able to do. There is another function you can use that actually would allow you to, that the calculator attempts automatically to fit the graph in here. And it's a function that's referred to as zoom fit. So if you hit on the zoom button, and then I want to see zoom fit. So I think you need to go down a bit further here to find it. Yeah, it's 0, okay? Zoom fit. Now, what this will do is, so all these zoom settings here, they're kind of like default settings that are going to change the window settings automatically. Now, the graph I have here is good, okay? Like we manually adjusted the window settings so I can see the x and y intercepts, but let's see what happens if we get the graph to do it for us. If I do zoom fit, what do I get? Okay, that's pretty good as well, okay? So it just automatically used this zoom fit function to scale the graph for me and like zoom in properly on the graph. And this is a good graph again because you can see the x-intercept down here and you can see the y-intercept at the very top. And again, like this is what you want to do. Like to have like a nicely drawn graph with your graphing calculator, you must be able to see the x and y intercepts. Okay, let's go to the next page here. And we can actually use the calculator to create a table of values. Okay, so again, I'm not going to read, I'll read through this, but I'll do it when I'm on the graphing calculator screen. Okay, so the table of values feature may be used to display the ordered pairs of a relation defined by an equation. Before using this feature, we will need to set up the table using the table setup feature. Okay, so accessing the table setup feature. Again, I'm just reading out what the notes say here. So it says press second in window. So let's go second, window. So that's going to bring up this. And actually, if you look above window, it says like table set is like an abbreviation. So we're doing something to set the table up. Okay, let's change it to like what it shows in the data table. So it says, where do you want the table to start at? I'm going to change this to -2. Okay, I think that's going to start off, that's like where that's going to be your first input value. Okay, your input value is going to be x is equal to -2. Now, this little triangle symbol and then table, that tells you like what all your input values are going to go up by. So my table is going to start at -2 and every entry is going to go up by 1. So I'd have a table of value that'd be like -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. Okay, so that's how it's going to construct the table. Okay, let's get out of this. So we hit second mode, which will go second quit. And now I want to access this table of values. So the way to do that is you hit second and then graph, because if you look above graph, it says table. And then what it does is it actually brings a table of values up for you. So it fills the table of values in without you actually having to plug numbers into the equation. Because what you would normally have to do if you did this manually is this equation here, which is y equals -1.25x plus 15. You'd have to like plug in x equals -2, calculate the value of y. Then plug in x equals -1, calculate the value of y. But if you just use this table feature here, so second graph, it actually makes the table of values for you, okay? Which is like a huge time saver, especially if it's a relation that is nonlinear, in which case you can't identify the pattern after a few different points. Okay, now, so that's how you get the table of values. Now, let's say that you wanted a value of x, like what's the value of y when x is 400? Well, I mean, you could scroll down the table. because if you just keep hitting down, it actually does keep going down. But you're going to have to hit the button like another 390 times to finally get to an X value of 400. That's going to take way too long to actually do that. So we can actually use a different feature here to determine if we have a really, really big input value, what a different output value is going to be. Okay, so here's how we do this. So I'm going to access the table set feature and change independent to ask. So this is what I mean. So go back to second and then hit window, which brings up this table set thing. And then I want to go down to, it says independent. So that's a reference to the variable. The independent variable are your X values. The dependent variable are your Y values. And we can actually change it so it's going to ask us what value of X we want to input in order to determine a proper output value. Okay, so I made it change to ask. Now let's go second quit. And let's go back to the table. So if I hit second and then I hit the graph button. Okay, now what it does is it doesn't show me anything, because what it wants me to do is it wants me to input in a value of X and then it'll calculate the value of Y for me. So let's say that I want to know what the value of Y is when X is 400. We'll just enter 400. Enter 400, press enter. And what this means is when the value of X is 400, then the value of Y is negative 485. I mean, you could have easily calculated that. You could have taken this equation, just plugged in negative 1.25 and replaced X with 400 and then added 15, and it would still give you, going back to second table, negative 485. But if you want the calculator to do the work for you, then you can by all means do that. If you want to access the graph and the table of values simultaneously, you can do this. Okay, so we're going to return to table set. I want to return to, I want to get rid of this asking what the independent variable is. Let's go back to second window and let's just change it back to automatic instead of the ask button here. Okay, and let's quit this. Okay, now we can actually simultaneously display both the graph and the table. So the way to do that is I hit the mode button. And then I want to scroll down to where it says something along the lines of G/T. Okay, so let's see where that actually is. So it should be on a line that says full horizontal. Now, actually for me, it doesn't use the abbreviation G/ or G-T. It actually says graph table. So what I can do here is I can go over to the right and highlight it where it says graph table and then hit enter. And then if I then hit graph, let's see what happens. It shows me both of the same. It shows me both the table of values and it shows me the graph simultaneously. Okay, if you actually do want to see that. Now you can actually scroll along the graph to look at what the different table values are. So if I hit the trace button, okay, now if I hit the trace button, you'll see this little tiny like kind of like cursor that's like flashing in the middle here. Now, what this is doing is this is telling me that I'm at X equals 7.5. And when X is 7.5, the value on the graph is 5.625. Now, what you can do is you can actually change where the cursor is by hitting left or right. So let's say I want to know what the value of the graph is when X equals 0. So I want to get the cursor to go to X equals 0. So let's keep hitting towards the left. I might actually hop over 0 a little bit just because it's doing a bunch of like weird decimal numbers here. Oh, I clicked it too many times. It's going to keep going past based on the number of times I clicked. Yeah, I've clicked way too many times. Okay, let's do it one at a time here. I think the issue is it's not going to quite give me X equals 0. You can get pretty close to what the value should be. Yeah, it kind of does it around there. Anyways, what you can do is you can just scroll along the line, and then it actually tells you what the ordered pair is. So based on where the cursor is, it'll tell you like what the value of X is on the graph, and it'll also tell you what the value of Y is on the graph. Okay, I want to get rid of this graph table feature because it's a little bit too much on my screen at once, and the screen itself is not very big to start off with. So let's go back to mode. And then to turn graph table off, I'm going to go down and change it back to full. Okay, hit enter, and then just go second mode to quit it again. And what we're going to do is we're going to find the Y coordinate of a point on the graph of a relation. And again, we're going to go and we're going to use this trace function to do that. Now, before I do that, I'm just going to change the window settings back to the manual window settings that I had before. So I'll change it to X-min is -5, X-max is 20, X-scale is 5. I'm going to change the Y-min to leave it as -10. I'll change the Y-max to 25, and then the Y-scale to 5. Again, if I graph that, it just goes back to the first graph that I had after I manually adjusted the window settings. Okay, now I want to figure out the value of Y at a specific value of X. So what you can do here is if you hit the trace button, and you can actually just flat out just enter what number you want. So you know how I was saying, like I want to know what the value of Y is when X equals 0. I'm pretty sure if I just type in 0 here, what it'll do is it'll say X is equal to 0, okay? Then I hit enter, and then it tells me when X is 0, Y is 15. Let's say you want to know what the value of Y is when X is, this is 5, 10, 15. Then all you have to do is hit trace, and then enter the value of X you want. So I could enter like 15, and then it tells me when X is 15, Y is -3.75. Or if you want to know what the value of Y is when X equals 10, hit trace, and then just type in the number 10, and it'll tell me right here, what's my input value? My input value is 10. So when X is 10, Y is 2.5. So that's how you can determine the value of Y for a given value of X. Now, let's say we want to do the reverse. So I have a value of Y, but I want to figure out what the value of X is. This is a bit trickier to actually do because we're going to have to use something called the intersect feature to do this. So let's say I want to know what the value of X is when Y is equal to 8. Now, if you look at my grid here, I could estimate this. So again, these grid lines are going up by 5. So this would be 5, 10. Okay, so 8 might be like somewhere about right here. And if I was doing this manually, I would go to like Y equals 8, go horizontally across to the graph, and then go down. It looks like it's about when Y is 8, X is going to be 1. But I want to use the calculator to actually for sure determine that it's correct. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to go back to this Y equals function, Y equals. Now, I have my original equation in there, -1.25x plus 15. Now, I'm going to hit down, so I'm now above Y2. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter in the value of Y that I'm interested in, okay? So we want to know what's the value of X when Y is equal to 8. So in the place of Y here, I'm just going to write down Y2 is equal to 8. And what that's going to do is it's going to make a horizontal line for me at Y equals 8. So if I do that and go back to the graph now, I can now see it's doing a horizontal line that passes through the x-axis at Y equals 8. What I'm interested in is I'm interested in this intersection point between the spot where I want to know the value of Y, which is 8, and my blue line, which is the actual relation that we have. Okay, now to do this, we use something called the intersect feature. Okay, so the way the intersect feature works is, first of all, to access it, because what I want is if I can figure out the intersection between these two lines, it'll give it to me as an ordered pair. And then if I know the ordered pair, I can know what the X value is. Okay, so the way to do this, I'm going to hit second, and then I'm going to hit trace, which is actually going to bring you to a function called calculate. So second trace, which brings you to calculate. And then I want to pick number 5. Number 5 is the intersect feature. So at 5. Okay, now what at the very bottom of the screen, what the calculator is going to do is it's going to start to ask you some questions. So it says, what's the first curve? Okay, the first curve just means like, what's the first line that I'm actually looking at? Okay, that's the blue line. Now, if you want to confirm it's the blue line, you can actually scroll along it. So if you press to the right, you can see my cursor go towards the right. If you move towards the left, it'll go towards the left. I want to get this cursor close to the intersection point. So I'm going to bring it up as close as I can to this intersection point. Okay. Then I'm going to hit enter. Now, the second curve, if you hit towards the left, that's this red line. Okay. So we're trying to figure out where the red line intersects the blue one. So it's asking you, is this the second curve? Yes, it is. Okay. So let's get this cursor to go close to the intersection point. Try to overlap those, I guess. Then hit enter. Now, the calculator is then going to ask you, do you want me to guess what the intersection of these two lines are? And yeah, we do, because that's what we want to figure out. So what it says here is that when y is equal to 8, then x is 5.6. Okay. So I was actually wrong. What did I say? I was totally off. I think I said when y is 8, x is 1. I forgot that the graph is scaled though. So every grid line goes up by a 5. So if every grid line goes up by a 5, then yeah, if y is 8 and you go down here, that looks like it's about x is 5.6. Okay, so it's a bit trickier if you want to figure out what the value of x is with a given value of y. You then have to go to the y equals. So let's say I want to know what the value of x is when y is 12. Then you change y2 to 12. Then go back here and graph. Now it'll make a different line, except this time it's going to do it at y equals 12. And if I want the x value and y is 12, use the intersect feature. So you just go second, calculate, number 5 for intersect. Again, get this cursor so it's close to the intersection point, and it's along the first curve. Hit enter. Do the same thing for the second curve. Hit enter. Get the calculator to guess for you. Would you want guess what the answer is? Sorry, my calculator just froze up for a second. Evidently, this calculation is too complicated for it. I'm just going to pause my video just so you don't have to sit here and wait endlessly for this. Just hold on. Okay, sorry about that. I actually had to I had to reset the calculator program because it completely froze up. Okay, so we were trying to figure out what the value of x is when y equals 12. So again, I made a line go through y equals 12. And then I used that intersect feature. So second intersect, which is 5. Again, first curve and enter, second curve and enter, guess it, hit enter. And it tells me when y is 12, the x value is 2.4. So again, a bit tougher to actually figure out the x value when you have an unknown y value. Okay, let's go to an example problem now. So we're down on this page, which is example, over here, this page. Let's clear all this ink. Okay, it says consider the equation y is equal to 2x minus 25. Use the graphing calculator to sketch the graph on the grid provided and write a suitable window. Okay, so first thing I want to do is I want to take this equation and I want to put it into the y equals. So what I would do is I want to enter into y1. I want to put in 2x minus 25. Okay, so let's go to my calculator, hit y equals. And let's clear both y1 and y2. So I'll clear y1, clear y2. So y1, we're going to enter 2x minus 25. Again, the x variable is below the mode button. And let's just see what happens if we graph it right now. Now, this is not a good graph. Yes, I can see the x-intercept, but I cannot see the y-intercept. So I do need to see what the y-intercept is. So there's a couple ways you could do this. First of all, the reason I can't see the y-intercept is because the y minimum value isn't negative enough. So what you could do is you could go to window and you could change the y minimum. So I could change it to, I don't know, let's make it negative 20, see if that fits in. Go back to graph. Still can't see it. So you kind of have to trial and error this out until you can finally see the intercept. So I go back to y minimum, and then let's make it negative 30. Let's make it even bigger here. And then, oh, that's, yeah. Okay. Let's see, does this fit? Yeah, now I can see the y-intercept, and now I can see the x-intercept. Now this is a decent graph. However, if you don't like manually adjusting the x minimum, x maximum, y minimum, y maximum, you can always try to see what that zoom fit would do. So let's see what would happen if I tried this. So I'm going to write down, so it says use the graphing calculator to sketch the graph on the grid provided below, sketch a suitable window. So again, let's just try zoom fit. So I'll say zoom fit with the question mark. So if I go back here, and let's go to zoom, and then again, zoom fit is 0. If you go down this list here, okay, hit enter, and let's see what it does. Does it give me a decent graph? Okay, got a y-intercept, I got an x-intercept, so that's good, okay? So now, if I go back to the example problem, it wants me to fill in this little block here. It says x. Oops. Change that. So what it's asking me to do is it's asking you to input what your window settings are. So you have 3 things to input. You want to input, the first thing is your x minimum value, then your x maximum value, and then what the x scale is. And same here. The first blank here is the y minimum value, then the y maximum value, and then the y scale. So to access that, go to the calculator and hit the window button. Okay, your x min is negative 5, your x max is 20, your x scale is 5. So if I go back to this, I can actually input that information. So your x max was negative 5, your x min is negative 5, your x max is 20, and our x scale was 5. Negative 5, 20, 5. Our y minimum is negative 35, our y max is 15, our y scale is 5. So we're going to write down negative 35 for the y minimum. The y maximum is 15. And the y scale is 5. Now we're going to sketch this line on the graph here. So whenever you're sketching lines, please use a ruler. Do not freehand sketch them. So we hit graph. I just want to sketch this. Okay, so I'll go back to my Smart Notebook file now. I'm going to grab this, get a straight line, and let's make that straight line blue in color. And something along the lines of, I think this is pretty good. Now, what I should also do, let's see, does that look like? Yeah, roughly. I mean, this is zoomed in a bit compared to like this one, which is zoomed out a bit more. I guess I could make it a bit better, a bit more zoomed out like it's supposed to be. It's maybe more like this would be good. Let's see, does that look better? Yeah, that's not bad. We should also put arrows at the end of the lines just to show that the lines are continuous. Okay, and then it says B, using a graphing calculator, determine the value of y when x is 4.5. Okay, so we're going to use the trace feature to do this. So what I would do is, first of all, I'm going to hit the trace button. So I go to my calculator and hit the trace button. Then all you have to do is just enter the value of x that you're trying to figure out. Just enter your input value. So my input value is what's the value of y when x is 4.5. So just type in 4.5 and then hit enter. And it tells me when x is 4.5, y is 16. Okay, so what did I do? I hit trace. Then I typed 4.5. Then I hit enter. And it told me when x is 4.5, the value of y, again, going back to the graphing calculator, is negative 16. Okay, so that's my answer. When x is 4.5, y is negative 16. So it's pretty easy to use a graphing calculator to get the value of y when you know what the input value is. Now, C says algebraically verify this. Okay, so the way I would do that is write the equation down. So y is equal to 2x minus 25. And I just want to evaluate the equation when x is equal to 4.5. So I'll do a quick substitution. I'm just going to replace x with 4.5 and then calculate what the value of y is. So it would be y is equal to 2 times 4.5 minus 25. 2 times 4.5 would be 9. 9 minus 25 would be negative 16. Okay, so I algebraically confirmed what the graphing calculator already told me. Okay, D says use the graphing calculator to determine the value of x when y is negative 6.4. Okay, this is tougher now because what you have to do is you have to go and you have to plot a second line. So in the y equals part, I'm going to type in y2 is equal to this number here, negative 6.4. So if I go to my calculator, hit y equals, we'll go down and we'll type in negative 6.4. And then let's go back to the graph. And I need to know what that intersection point is. So then I hit second, trace or calculate, hit 5 for intersect. Okay, so it says first curve, we're along the blue line. Just bring it close to the intersection point. Hit enter. Second curve, we're on the red line. Okay, bring it close to the intersection point. Calculator asks you, do you want me to guess what the intersection point is? Yes. Hit enter. Okay, and the intersection point is x is equal to, x is 9.3 when y is negative 6.4. Okay, let me write the order of the keystrokes out for you. So in terms of what I did here, first of all, I hit y equals. Then in y equals, I entered y2 is negative 6.4. Then I hit second. Then I hit trace to go to calculate. Okay, because that brings up calc. And then I picked the intersect function, so that was number 5. Then I hit enter 3 times. And then the calculator tells me when y is negative 6.4, x is 9.3. Okay, and that's my answer. X is 9.3. Here's the decimal. X is 9.3 when y is negative 6.4. Now, E wants me to verify this algebraically. So the way I would do that is write the equation down. So the equation is y is equal to 2x minus 25. And then this time around, though, I'm going to plug in the value of y. Okay. So I'm going to plug in the value of y, which is negative 6.4. And I'm going to have to calculate what the value of x is. This is a bit tougher because I'm actually going to have to isolate for x in the equation. So this would then turn into negative 6.4 is equal to 2x minus 25. To get x by itself, first of all, add 25 to both sides of the equation. Negative 6.4 plus 25 would be 18.6. Then you'd have 18.6 is equal to 2x. To get x by itself, divide both sides of the equation by 2. So divide 2, divide 2. The 2's cancel off. And then I would get x is equal to 9.3, which is the same thing as if you use the graphing calculator to determine it. Okay, let's go to the next page. Now, I've been saying all along that a good graph shows you both the x-intercepts and the y-intercepts. And now what we want to do is we want to use the graphing calculator to determine these. So you did this algebraically because when you have an x-intercept is when y is equal to 0. And that was like the emphasis of the lesson number 3 was doing these algebraic calculations. Okay, the best way to do this is, it says you can use the intersect feature to do this. I actually don't like doing this, okay? I prefer to use something called the 0 feature. So we're actually not going to worry about this here. I guess I could show it to you. I don't really like this method though. So basically what it wants you to do is it wants you to enter the value of, because like the idea is the x-intercept is when y equals 0. So you'd plug in y2 is equal to 0. So if we go back to my calculator, hit y equals, and I want to know the value of x when y is 0, which is the x-intercept. Okay, let's clear that. Hit 0, graph again. Now it's going to show me a red line, a horizontal line directly along the x-axis. And then what you could do is you could use the intersect feature to determine that. So I could hit second, trace, and then intersect, which is 5. And then again, bring it up to the x-intercept. Hit enter, bring this one to the x-intercept, hit enter, get it to guess. Then it tells you that when y is 0, the x-intercept is 12.5. Okay, that's one way to do it. There's actually a faster way to figure out an x-intercept. So I'm going to go back to y equals, and I'm going to get rid of this y2 equals 0. Okay, clear it. Okay, let's quit, go back to the main menu. Now, I'm going to use something called the 0 feature to do this. Okay, so the way to access the 0 feature is I'm going to hit second and then trace. And number 2 says 0. Now, anytime you see that word 0, okay, 0 is making reference to an x-intercept. Why is an x-intercept referred to as a 0? Because that's where y is equal to 0, okay? An x-intercept is where y is 0. Therefore, we're going to use the 0 to figure out the x-intercept. Okay, so I hit, again, second, and then trace to access this menu. Now, number 2 says 0, okay? So that's going to get an x-intercept. So hit number 2. Then it's going to plot my graphs. Okay, now, what it says here is it says left bound question mark. What this wants you to do is it wants you to put the cursor to the left of where the x-intercept is. If I look at the graph, the x-intercept is located where I have my mouse cursor moving up and down. So all I need to do is put this flashing cursor somewhere to the left of it, okay? If you want, you can move it closer to the x-intercept, but it doesn't really matter. The key thing is it has to be to the left of the x-intercept. Okay, so I'm going to hit enter now. Then it says right bound. What right bound means is I need to take this cursor and I have to move it to the right of the x-intercept. Okay, so I'm going to start to move this to the right. Okay, so now I have the cursor to the right of the x-intercept, and if I hit enter, now what it's showing you is it's saying the calculator is going to focus on this small region here, and it's going to attempt to find an x-intercept in that region if you hit enter for it to guess. And if you hit enter for it to guess, it also gives you an x-intercept that is 12.5. So the x-intercept is 12.5 when y is equal to 0. Okay, and personally, I find that a little bit faster to figure out the x-intercept because you don't have to go to the y equals and enter y2 equals 0 and then use the intersect feature. Okay, this is a bit quicker. Use the 0 feature to do this. Okay, now we can also use the graphing calculator to determine the y-intercept. Okay, so if I look down here, I can actually see what the y-intercept is. If these grid lines are going are 5s, it'd be like -5, -10, -15, -20. It looks like it's -25 here, but let's confirm that. Okay, there's a few ways you can do this. Okay, so the first way you can do it is pretty easy. You just hit the trace button. And then, actually, let's go back here. Let's go to this page. So you have to remember a y-intercept is where x is equal to 0. So what I can do is I can go here, hit trace, and then just hit 0. Because remember, if you hit trace and then enter a number, it's just going to allow you to put in an input value. So I want my input value here to be 0 because the x-intercept is 0. Sorry, the x value is 0 when you're looking at a y-intercept. So if I hit enter, it gives me a -25. No problem. There's a different way you can do it as well. So you can also use the trace button. So I can go second, and then I can hit trace. And then if you pick number 1, it says value. Now what that means is it's going to let you put in an input value. Okay. So if I hit number 1 and if I select number 1, then it prompts you and it says, okay, which input value of x do you want me to have? Now again, if we're figuring out the y-intercept is when x is equal to 0. So you can just hit x equals 0, and then it tells you right away when x is 0, which is along the y-axis, then the y-intercept is -25. So either of those methods are pretty fast to do it. You can either just hit the trace button and then just hit, okay, 0 for like an input value of x equals 0. Or you can just go second, trace, pick input value 1, and then it's enter in 0, and it does the same thing. So it's up to you in terms of like how you want to do that. The other way you can do it is you can use the table of values. I don't really recommend this method because this is going to be a bit longer. So what you'd have to do is you'd have to access the table setup. So I'd go like second window and then get the table right here. Okay, and then what it would do is just go down and change the independent to ask. So it's going to ask you to tell me it's going to ask you what it wants the input value to be. So now if I go to second quit and then I access the table by hitting second graph or table, it'll prompt you. It'll say, okay, what's the value of x that you want me to input? We'll hit x equals 0 for a y-intercept, and then it tells me y is -25. Okay, I think it's faster, and I don't like this because you're just looking at the table, and I think it's a lot easier to understand what an x and y intercept is if you can look at the graph. That's why I'd recommend doing one of those other two methods as opposed to using the table to do this. Okay, so let's do another example now. So now we're down to, okay, let's just clear this. I don't know whose writing that is. Okay, it says in each case, use the features of a graphing calculator to find the x and y intercepts of the graphs of the relation. Okay, so we're not going to do this algebraically. Okay, so the first thing you have to do is you have to plug this into the graphing calculator. So in the graphing calculator, in the place of y1, I'm going to enter this in. Now, I'm going to put the entire numerator in its own set of brackets. So I'm going to put down bracket 5x plus 15. And then I'm going to divide that by 3, okay? Okay, so let's input that into y equals. So let's go to y equals, and hit clear. And then I'm going to enter in brackets 5x plus 15. If you don't put this in brackets, it's going to mess the order of operations up because we're dividing the entire numerator by 3. So with the division button and then 3. Okay, let's see what the graph looks like. Okay, it's not the greatest graph. I mean, because like there's a huge chunk of the graphing area I'm not using. So let's see what happens if I went zoom fit. So zoom and then 0, if that makes it a bit better. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, more of the graph is actually being used. And I can see the x-intercept and I can see the y-intercept, so that's good. Okay, so let's use these features to actually figure out what the x and y-intercepts are. Okay, so we entered my equation into y1. Now the x-intercept, so the way to do this is you're going to hit second, and then you're going to hit the trace button, which will access calculate. Second, and then trace, and then which is the calculate. So we do that. Second, trace, pick 2, which is the 0 function. Okay, so let's write that down here. Again, a 0 means when y is equal to 0. And then all I have to do is set the left bound and the right bound. Okay, so I got to take this cursor and put it to the left side of the x-intercept. So I'm going to have to push left a bunch of times to get there. Which is taking an eternity. Okay, it has to be to the left of the x-intercept. Okay, now it's to the left of the x-intercept, hit enter. Right bound, just get it so the cursor is now to the right of the x-intercept. Just move it over a little bit here. Hit enter. And then it's going to guess the x-intercept for you. And then it tells you when y is 0, x is equal to -3. Okay, so we could write this down as either an ordered pair or as a value. So here, when x is equal to -3, when y is equal to 0, or you could write it down as an ordered pair. You could write down -3, 0. Now the y-intercept, I'm going to use that value function. So I'm going to go second, and then I'm going to hit trace, which will pull up, which will access that calculate part. And this time around, so let's go back here. We'll hit second, trace, and then I'll select 1 for value. And then now, what's the y-intercept? The y-intercept is when x is equal to 0. So we hit x is equal to 0, and it tells you when x is 0, y is 5. That's our y-intercept. Okay, so we enter x equals 0, and then it tells you when x is equal to 0, y is equal to 5. That's your y-intercept. Or if you want to write it down as an ordered pair, you could write down 0, +5. Okay, I'm just going to pause here for a moment because I have another class that's going to start in about like 1 minute, and then I will come back in a very brief moment. So my apologies again for having to pause this a second time. Okay, and I'm back again. Okay, let's go to B. So now we're going to plot in you should be able to tell right away, this is going to be a nonlinear relation because there's a square attached to the x. So the first thing I want to do is I want to input this into my graphing calculator. So y2 is equal to -x squared plus x plus 6. Sorry, not y2. I want to put it in the place of y1. Okay, so y1. So let's go back to the graphing calculator. Hit y equals, hit clear on y1. We'll write down the negative button. Again, not be confused with the subtraction button. So we have -x. Now, to access the square button, there's a button that says log, L-O-G. It's directly above it. It even says x squared, so you can hit that to access the square button. Plus x plus 6. Okay, let's graph and see what this looks like, although I suspect the graphing window is not going to be great. You know what? That's not bad, actually. It does show you actually have 2 x-intercepts here, and you have 1 y-intercept. But let's see if the zoom fit button, the zoom fit feature, will do a better job. So hit zoom and then 0. That's actually worse. Yeah, I really don't like that. Okay. So here, let's adjust the window setting. Let's go back to zoom standard. So just go zoom and then hit zoom standard and see what that looks like. Zoom standard is zoom 6. That's good, okay? So again, to access that, just hit zoom and then number 6. That's probably the 2 buttons I'd try before manually adjusting the window settings. Is I'd try zoom fit, see if you can see the x and y intercepts, and then try zoom standard as well and see what it looks like. Okay, let's get the x-intercepts first. So you'll notice here there's actually 2 x-intercepts. Now I'm not going to write down the steps to do this. I'll simply just go ahead and do it. So what you want to do is hit second, calculate. An x-intercept is a 0 because that's when y is 0, so hit 2. Now let's start off with the x-intercept on the left-hand side. So I got to move the cursor, the left bound, to the left side of that x-intercept. Hit enter. The right bound, move it to the right side of this x-intercept I'm trying to find. Hit enter. Hit enter a third time to make a guess, and it tells you that x is -2 when y is 0. So we can fill that in. So there's actually a couple of x-intercepts. So we have x is -2 when y equals 0. So that's my first x-intercept. Or if you write it as an ordered pair, you can write down -2, comma 0. We have a second x-intercept though. So we have an x-intercept over towards the right here. So I'm going to hit second, calculate, or second trace, 2 for 0. Make the left bound go to the left side of that x-intercept. So that's about right here. Hit enter. Then go to the right side of that x-intercept, which is here. Hit enter. Then it asks you, do you want me to guess the x-intercept? Hit enter. And it does. And it's 3. Okay, so we go back here. X is equal to 3 when y is equal to 0. Therefore, we would have 3, comma 0 as my second x-intercept. As for the y-intercept, this is a bit quicker to determine. So I can go back to my calculator, hit second, and then the trace button to pull up the calculate menu, hit 1 for value, and then identify the input value of x. So the y-intercept is when x is equal to 0. So enter in 0, hit enter, and then it's y is equal to 6. So if I go back here, when x is equal to 0, y is equal to 6. Or if you want to write it down as an ordered pair, you could write down 0, comma 6. And make sure those ordered pairs are in brackets. Okay, there's 2 more pages, but we're only going to do one of them. The last page deals with, it's an extension where you can use the calculator to find a minimum or a maximum value. I might make reference to that later on, but right now we don't need to worry about that. The final thing we're going to do is, well, what happens if you get an x or y intercept that's a repeating decimal number, and I want to turn it into a fraction? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to use this equation here. We're going to use the equation y is equal to 2x minus 11 divided by 7. So I'll start off by plugging that into y1. So y1 is 2x minus 11. Again, we're put that in brackets and then divide that by 7. So if I go to my graphing calculator, hit y equals, hit clear, and then we're going to enter in brackets 2x, and again, x is below mode, 2x minus 11 divided by 7. Let's see what the graph looks like. Okay, definitely got the y-intercept. I've also got the x-intercept, so that graph is good. I can at least visualize it. Okay, now let's figure out what the what do we want to do first? Yeah, we're going to find the x-intercept. Okay, so to find the x-intercept, I go second, and I go calculate, 0. Okay, put the cursor to the left bound, which is to the left side of the x-intercept. Hit enter. Put the cursor to the right side of the x-intercept. Hit enter. And then it's going to guess. Now, it's going to give me the x-intercept as 5.5. Now, if you want the calculator to turn that into a fraction for you, it's actually really easy to do. All you have to do is just hit second quit, go back to this menu. Well, the calculator has now stored that value of x into the calculator. So if you actually just hit the value of x, if I hit x, it tells me x is, oh, wait a second. What was that fraction again? 5.454545. Okay, let's turn that into a fraction. So hit math, and then number 1 for fraction. And what it'll do is it's going to take this value of x and it's going to turn it into a fraction, which is, okay, wait a second, something's off here. I'm going to go back to just calculating the x-intercept again. So let's do, okay, we got the equation. We're going to calculate this using the 0 feature. Okay, so go to the left here, hit enter, go to the right here, hit enter again. Okay, it tells me x is 5.5. Okay, we're going to quit. I'm going to pull up x. Now I'm going to hit the math button. And then I'm going to go to just fraction immediately. And then what it's going to do is it's going to take the value of x and it's going to turn it into a fraction. And yeah, okay, this time it actually did work. So it turns 5.5 into 11.2. So after you figure out the x-intercept, just go back to the main screen, hit the x button, then hit math, and then turn it into a fraction, and it'll do it automatically for you. Okay, let's quit that. Now, how about the y value if you want to convert y into a fraction? Okay, so let's say we figure out the y-intercept. So the easiest way to figure out the y-intercept is hit second, and then trace, calculate, pick number 1 value. And remember, the y-intercept is when x is equal to 0. So just hit x equals 0 and then enter. Okay, so it tells me y is negative 1.571429. Okay, so it's an ugly decimal number. I want it as a fraction. So let's go back to the main menu. Now, it's a bit more difficult to access what y is. Now, if you have like the TI-84 Plus, you'll notice that like you also have some letters of the alphabet above some of these numbers. For example, if you look above number 1, the number 1 here, it says L1 and it also says Y, except the Y is in green. To access that green Y letter, you hit the button alpha and then you hit Y. Okay. If you hit alpha and then 1, then it'll bring up the Y. And then the same thing, just convert it into a fraction by hitting math. And then the number 1 is fraction. Hit enter, then hit enter again. And then it turns it into negative 11 over 7. Okay, I realized, whoops, let's clear all the ink on here. Okay, I realized that this is a bit of a long lesson. Really, the important thing to be able to get out of this is just using the graphing calculator to quickly sketch a graph, using the calculator to determine the value of y when x is something, or the value of x when y is something, and then how to use the calculator to determine x and y intercepts. I think that's really all we focused on right now. Okay, so you can practice this by completing a few questions. So just practice it by completing numbers 2, 5, 6, and 7, starting on page 443. And I'll talk to you in the next